What's going on, guys? We're gonna go ahead and install the AMS Flex Fuel kit for the VR30 on a Q50, and as you can see on the left, I have the Deatschwerks inline fuel filter, which we're going to be installing as well. Now, they sent me the wrong fittings for the filter because that is the updated filter, and it needs a 10 AN orb fitting instead of the old 8 AN, which unfortunately I don't have. So let's get right into it. So first, you want to go ahead and remove the negative terminal on the battery. I have the entire trim pieces of the engine bay off because I am doing the install for the inner chiller. You'll need to relieve the fuel pressure. You can either remove the fuel pump fuse from the IPDM over here and cranking the car a couple times. Make sure to do this when the engine is extremely cool. And alright, so you need to remove the cover off the IPDM, and the way you do that is by pulling these tabs up, sliding the whole box out, unfastening from the top, and then you have two tabs that you have to push up and pull the cover off. So now you're gonna pull the fuel pump fuse and then turn on the car, crank it like 3 times until it stalls out, and obviously you need the battery back on to do that. So the fuse you want to pull is going to be on the last row, horizontal, parallel to the ground. It's going to be the number 15 amp. There's two 15 amps on that bottom row. It's going to be the one in the middle, which would be that one back there, not the first one. It's going to be the 4th one in. So pull that out. It's nighttime here, I apologize for that. So pretty much, you're gonna get your ethanol sensor, then grab these fittings. It's the 3/8 to 6 AN fitting. Pretty much just separating the fitting, putting the locking end over the bevel, and just tightening it. Now get your bracket. Alright, so you're gonna want to put the strap over the bridge here, and then the flat surface, the flat part, is going to go common to the bottom of the sensor. Alright, so it's going to be just like that. You're going to want to remove that 10mm bolt. Alright, so if you have some AN fittings, that would be, well, if you have some AN wrenches, that would be great. If not, just put a crap load of electric tape or painter's tape if you have, so you don't mar up the fittings. So you're gonna fit this onto the factory little bracket here. You won't be able to use a socket type Allen key there. So if you just use an Allen key like this. Alright, so we have to remove that 12mm bolt. So in order to do that, you're going to want to lift up on this orange tab, pull back on that little clip. The blue one, you want to bring it to the passenger side and just push in on the tab and lift up at the same time. That'll give you room, give you access to remove that 10mm bolt. Remove all the fuel lines, all the harnesses off the bracket. Start wrenching away. Since I'm installing the high pressure fuel pump as well, I'm going to remove the high pressure fuel pump. For those that don't need to remove the high pressure fuel pump, all you have to do is actually remove this supply hose here and make sure that the fuel pressure was relieved. If anything, just get a rag like I'm going to do now, just in case, to capture most of the relief from the line. So just push down on the purple tabs and then pull back on the hose. Alright, we didn't get anything. Keep a rag here, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. You're going to remove the fuel hose. Alright, so now we have to remove, there's going to be 2 M6 bolts because we're going to remove this entire bracket with this fuel pressure regulator and replace it with one of the supplied brackets. To make it easier to remove this whole fuel hose and the bracket, you're going to want to remove that bolt and that bolt right there. That way we can have a little more room to pull this off the engine. To make it easier to remove this fuel hose, we're going to want to remove these two bolts from here. They are 10mm. That way it gives us a little more room. If you guys don't have one of these already, you should get one. It helps for very tight spaces. It's a ratcheting box end wrench. Now we got the fuel pressure regulator and the whole fuel hose removed. Okay, so you're gonna attach the longer 6AN hose. The straight side is gonna go into the nipple here, and the 45-degree is gonna be on the other end. You're gonna remove the clip off the old bracket and replace it onto the new bracket, and just run the line the same way it was during the factory underneath the water lines. I'm gonna go ahead and clip this on right now. That way I don't get any debris in there. So you're pretty much gonna run it and you're gonna bolt back up the water lines. I took out 3 bolts, one here, one there, and one here. You could get away with just removing these 2 probably. Alright, so you have this hose, you want it underneath the AC line. And then this hose, I might put it over the top. Alright, so this line is going to go to this section here. Now I'm going to be using a filter, which I don't have the fittings for it today, but I will be installing it tomorrow, so it's still going to be within this video. Now if you don't have a filter, you're just going to put this line over here, it swivels, attach it here, and this one's going to go to the high pressure fuel pump. I'm also replacing this one for the big bore, so I'm gonna go ahead and in this video I'm gonna edit out this and install the high pressure fuel pump. So continuing on with the install, as you can see, I already have all the cowling and plastics removed off of the car because I'm installing the interchiller. So basically you're gonna want to plug this into the continental sensor for the flex fuel. Now I have version 1 of the AMS kit, so I'm actually gonna install the fuelet sensor, and then this is gonna go into the fuelet sensor. But pretty much you want to route all these cables right along the AC line. Keep them away from the wipers. I installed the fuelet sensor. This is version 1. I think version 2 does not have this sensor, but I'm installing it anyway. And then I passed it through the grommet here, and then I connected the gray cable, and now I'm gonna zip tie this all the way towards the IPDM over there and get those 3 cables connected. Alright, so right behind where the 15 amp fuse was, we're gonna go ahead and remove the 10 amp fuse from there, and we're going to replace it with this tap fuse. Make sure to have the 5 on the top and the 10 on the bottom. Remember to put the 15 amp fuse back for the fuel pump, which was number 52. Remove number 53, which is a 10 amp fuse, and replace it with this fuse tap. You're gonna connect the 12 volt power into here. You're gonna tap into the ground with the black, and then the white is gonna be with another cable, and we're gonna tap into a pin over here. So this is where I tapped into the ground. I have the power cable connected, And now we're gonna route that white one through here with a different harness. Alright, so now we need to disconnect these connectors from the ECU. You're gonna push in on this tab here. Same thing here. And same thing here. You want to do it from the smallest to the largest, working your way in. Make sure the batteries, obviously this is going to be disconnected. Okay. So now we need to separate the connectors here. We need to separate the brown connector. This was a secondary locking mechanism. Now we have a clip here. Push in. You want to push in on that tab and expose these here. So now you're gonna lift up on the tab here. There's small little tabs right here. Kind of want to just lift up. Alright. So on the gray connector, you want to look for pin number 60. Pin number 60 is going to be a white plug. You have 3 on the very edge. You have an empty one. Then you got one that's taken here. Then you count 1, 2. That second one is where you're going to remove that white pin. If you can see right there, you have to remove this white pin right here. I'm going to use a pick set. That'll be number 60. So right next to that yellow cable, you want to remove that little white plug and connect the Flex Fuel input signal wire. You want to follow the same orientation as all the other pins, so make sure to look on the bottom. So the opening is going to be towards the bottom. You should feel a clip, and once you do, you're pretty much good to go. Alright, so with the white wire, you can run it right through the back of this connector. Now you can cut the zip tie that's here to make it a little easier. I didn't have to. I just ran it through. And now you're gonna go ahead and attach these connectors back to its location. Be very careful with these connectors not to break anything. Make sure that all 4 tabs lock in place. Place back the brown lock. Tuck in all the cables. Lock everything in place. So pretty much you want to put this in reverse order. Alright, this part is very important. There's pins here. So you don't want to push anything too hard. So with these connectors, you want to put in the largest one, the one inboard closest to the engine first. Lock it in place, then this one, lock it in place, and then the smaller one on the outside. Now you're gonna use a wire loom. So I ran the wire loom through the bottom and through the bottom of the grommet here. And now I'm gonna try to tuck it over here. Plug in the input signal. And finish tucking everything inside the wire loom. Alright, so pretty much now what you're gonna do is just tidy up everything. So you're pretty much just gonna zip tie everything that's loose and put back your IPDM cover, your battery, or your cowling, plastic trim, and you should be good to go. Now in the case of the high pressure fuel pump and the inline filter, which I'm going to be installing this morning, it's going to be on the same video. Might not. Either way, I'm still going to let you know. If you like this video and you thought it was informative, please make sure to hit that like button, guys. It'll help me out. And subscribe if you're new. And stay tuned because I'm pretty much almost done and tune date is coming up. And I hope to break some stock turbo records. Alright, to make the fuel line work, you're gonna want a 6AN female coupler. Which you're gonna place here onto the AN fitting of the flex fuel sensor. You're gonna add a 45-degree AN fitting. There's gonna be a 6AN male to a 6AN female. Remember to tighten all these with an AN wrench. So tomorrow, which will be in this video, I need to wait for the 10 orb fitting to 6AN fitting so I can put the fuel filter right through here, and I'll go ahead and install the high pressure fuel pump. This fitting here is going to go either on your factory high pressure fuel pump or your AMS big bore fuel pump. Alright, so as you can see there, I have the high pressure fuel pump installed. It's literally just removing two M8 bolts, loosening the nut from the fuel line and pulling up on the fuel pump. You want to loosen the M8 bolts one turn at a time and flip-flop from each side, and you're gonna pretty much install it in the same order. There is what they call a bucket. When you remove it, there's gonna be a hole, and it's gonna be chamfered, and pretty much you're gonna want to see that bucket all the way down to the bottom. If it's not all the way down to the bottom, you'll have to turn the engine over via the crank, and once it gets to the lowest point, that's when you're going to want to install the high pressure fuel pump. In my case, it was all the way to the bottom, so I did not need to do that. And then you have to kind of bend this line so it lines up a little bit, so you just gotta kind of push it towards the center and a little bit up. All I did was use a hammer and I banked it towards the cam cover there. I banked it on top of this and I bent it. So right now what we're gonna do is install the fuel filter and wrap up the AMS Flex Fuel install. Alright, so this is it, fully assembled. I don't like the current location. They didn't have the proper size cable clamp, so I just pretty much tied it into there. I'm gonna run another one right here just to hold it from moving, even though it's pretty solid. I also don't like its current location, so I'm probably just gonna get this hose and connect it straight to the fuel flex fuel sensor and move the inline filter over there on that side where the hose is coming from the fuel pump. That hose right there, I'm gonna replace it with a nylon braided hose with a couple AN fittings and mount the filter over here on that side. There's a lot of room there. There's barely any room here, so that's what I'm gonna do. The AMS big bore is also installed, and pretty much all I have to do is wait for the AN wrenches that come in tomorrow to tighten everything perfectly fine. I tightened it with my current wrenches and some tape, but just to double check, I'm going to use AN wrenches since they're aluminum and I won't damage the fittings. Alright, so right now what I'm going to do is actually work on finishing the chiller, because that's pretty much all that's left to do. The chiller and the two tanks, AMS tanks. So guys, stay tuned and thank you for following my progress. If you're new to the channel, make sure to consider subscribing and always hit that like button, guys. Peace.